Hi, third grade. I am going to read you the first chapter of Rowan of Rin. It'll be our new reading book, and I hope that you can complete the work I'm asking you to do after each chapter. Sometimes, because these chapters are a little short, I might just read a couple of them. But today I'm going to start with the first one. This is Rowan of Rin, like I said, by Emily Rodda. She also wrote the Del Toro Quest, which I read to my class last year, and they loved it. It's so fun. I think you would love it too. Before I read this chapter, I wanted to cover a couple words that I thought you might not be 100% familiar with, like disdainfully. If you're looking at someone disdainfully, you're really looking at them like with contempt, with a feeling of like you really don't like them. It's not quite like hatred, but they're unpleasurable. You don't want to be by them. You don't approve of the way they are, and you're kind of giving them a cold shoulder, disdainfully. It's strong word. Ointment, like an unguent, like a lotion or a salve. It's usually medicinal that you put on, like a cut or an abrasion or a burn or a bee sting or something like that. Ointments are just little medicines that we can put onto our skin. Scuttled. When I was writing that word scuttled, it made me think of two meanings. My first one that popped into my head was when you scuttle a boat, which means you kind of like get alongside of it in the old days, like a wooden ship, or you get alongside of it, or you get underneath it and you drill holes into it. I think they still do that if they sink ships. Sometimes I think they kind of say goodbye to boats and they sink them, or they used to anyways, and they would scuttle the ship. That means you've poked holes in the bottom and now it's going to sink. But in this context, it's like scuttling, like really hurried steps, quick steps, like a beetle or a lizard might scuttle across the yard. It's scuttled across the yard. And then contempt. If you have contempt for something, you basically think it's vile. It's no good in any way. You don't want anything to do with it. You have strong feelings about it. When you have contempt towards something, it's a feeling of disgust and not quite hatred, but like you're looking down at them for sure, whatever you have contempt for. Like racism. You should have, or I have, contempt for racism. I don't like it. I don't want to be around it. I don't want to see it. I don't want it to be there. I want it to be gone. There's no room for it in a healthy world. So, some vocabulary words to think about. And I get to read you chapter 1 of Rowan of Rin, which you can't see the title because of the library. Last book to check from the library, though, because now the library is closed. We actually got this when they're delivering to the curbside. Here's a little map, and I'm sure that map will become more important as time goes on. I will be sending you your own map. Chapter 1, The Meeting. One morning, the people of Rin woke to find that the stream that flowed down the mountain and through their village had slowed to a trickle. By nightfall, even that small flow had stopped. The mill wheel lay idle. There was no water to turn its heavy blades. Remember, in the old days, the mills were powered by water, and they would turn the water mill, and it would turn the large stones inside where people would ground their flour. The bookshawed drinking pool on the other side of the village was still. No bubbling stream stirred it into life and kept it topped to the brim. There was no change on the second day or the third. By the fourth day, the water in the pool was thick and brown, and the bookshaws shook their heavy heads and pawed the ground whenever they went to drink in the morning and in the evening. After 5 days, the pool was so shallow that even little Anad, who was only 5 years old, could touch the bottom with her hand without getting her sleeve wet. Still, the stream failed to flow. On the evening of the 6th day, the worried people met in the market square to talk. The bookshaw could not drink today, said Lan, the oldest person in the village, and once the greatest fighter. If we do not act soon, they will die. Not Star, whispered Anad to her brother, who was the keeper of the bookshaw. Star will not die, though, will she, Rowan? Because you will give Star water from our well. bookshaw cannot drink from our well, Anad, said Rowan. It's not sweet enough for them. It makes them ill. They can only drink water that flows down from the mountain. It has always been so. If the stream stays dry, Star will die like all the rest. Anad began to sob quietly. The children of Rin were not supposed to cry, but Anad was very young, and she loved Star. Rowan stared straight ahead. His eyes were tearless, but his chest and throat ached with sadness and fear. Isn't that interesting? Sometimes when we're really sad, I feel it right here, like my throat hurts. Crying usually solves all those feelings. The sadness he felt was for Star, his friend, and the strongest and gentlest of all the bookshaw, and for all the other great humped woolly beasts, each one which he knew by name. But the fear was also for himself and Anad and their mother, and indeed for the whole village. Rowan knew, as Anad did, that without the bookshaw there would be no rich creamy milk to drink, or cheese curd, or butter to eat. There would be no thick gray wool for cloth. There would be no help to plow the fields or carry in the harvest. There would be no broad backs to bear the burdens on the long journeys down to the coast to trade with the clever and silent Morris folk. The life of Rin depended on the bookshaw, and without them the villagers too would die. Anad could not imagine the valley without the village, but Rowan could, reading the stories in the old house of books and listening half asleep to Timon under the teaching tree. Most of all, sitting on the grass by the stream while the bookshaw grazed around him and in the silence in the morning, he had often imagined this place as the settlers must have first seen it. Wouldn't it be cool if our classroom was under a tree called the teaching tree? Hundreds of years ago, they had climbed through the hills, carrying the few things that they owned on their back, looking for somewhere in their strange land that they could call their own. They had come from far away, across the sea. They had fought a terrible enemy, and on the coast they had heard from the wandering native people called the travelers of a place at the bottom of a forbidden mountain in the high country far inland. They had been tramping for many, many days in search of it, and they were very tired, and some had given up hope. Then one afternoon they topped a rise and looked down, and there below them, nestled between a towering mountain ahead and the hill on which they stood, was a green secret valley. The people were speechless. They saw trees loaded with small blue fruits and fields of flowers they did not recognize. They saw a stream and a pool and a herd of strange gray beasts lifting their heads to stare, their horns shining in the sun. They saw stillness and silence and rich earth and peace. The people knew then that this was the place, and this would be their home, so they came down and mingled with the big gentle animals who were tame and unafraid. They called them the bookshaw. The stream flows down from the mountains, said Broaden, the furniture maker, her voice breaking into Rowan's thoughts. He watched her stab the air with her stubby pointing finger. So the problem must be up there. Up there, something is amiss. Something is stopping the flow. All eyes turned to the mountain rising high above the village, its tip shrouded as always in clouds. Shrouded means like covered and draped. We must climb the mountain and find out what it is, Brondon went on. This is our only chance. No! Neil the potter shook his head. We cannot climb the mountain. Even the travelers do not venture there. Terrible dangers await anyone who dares, and at the top, the dragon. Brondon sneered at him. You're talking like a crazy traveler. Yourself, Neil. There is no dragon. The dragon is a story told to children to make them behave. If there was a dragon, we would have seen it. It would prey on the bookshaw and on us. Perhaps it takes its prey elsewhere. We do not know, Brondon. Alun, the baker's light, pleasant voice rose above the muttering of the crowd. But if you will excuse me for talking like a crazy traveler, remembering that my father was one, it is only to be expected. Let me remind you of what we do know. His usually smiling face was grim as he stared Brondon down. We do know that we hear it roar almost every morning and every night, and that we see its fire in the clouds. Brondon rolled her eyes disdainfully, but Rowan shivered. tending the bookshaw in the cold and dark of the winter mornings, and in the evenings when the sun had slipped behind the mountains, he had heard the sound of the dragon. He had seen its fire, too, in the sky above the cloud. The bookshaw swayed and grew restless at these times, and the calves bellowed, and the bigger beasts pawed the ground, and they flared their nostrils, and they huddled together in fear. Even Star moaned when the dragon roared, and when he stroked her neck to calm her, he would feel her nerves jumping along under her soft wool. Have you ever pet the side of a horse and felt it like kind of its muscles twitching and jumping under there? That's probably what he means by that. Suddenly, he realized that no one else seemed to have something no one else had thought of. He must speak. Nervously, he rose to his feet, and the villagers stared curiously at him. What could this boy Rowan, the shy, timid herder of the bookshaws, have to say? The dragon has not roared since the stream dried up, said Rowan. Not in the mornings and not at night. He spoke as loudly as he could, but his voice sounded small in the silence, and he sank back into his place. Is this so? Alan looked at the circle. Is the boy mistaken? No, he is not, said Brandon slowly. I recall it now. Indeed, there has been no sound from the mountains for days. She lifted her head. So I am right. There is something amiss, high above us, and I have told you what we must do. But we cannot, said Neil, with dread. The mountain is too steep and too dangerous. We cannot climb it. Has anyone even ever tried? Inquired Alan. Yes, said the tall, straight-backed Marley, the weaver and the dyer of cloth. In times gone by, some people did climb the mountain to look for new fruits to plant in our orchard, but they never returned. After that, the people of Rin heeded the warning and left the mountain alone. You see, Neil burst out, you see, if we climb the mountain, we will die. But Neil, boomed Brandon, if we do not climb the mountain, we will die. Brandon is right. We must make our choice, said Strong John, who is the keeper of the orchard. We remain here and hope the stream begins running again of its own accord, or we climb the mountain and try to remove whatever is stopping the water from flowing down to us. Both ways are dangerous. What is our decision, to go or to stay? We must go, Marley replied. We cannot simply stand by and let death slowly come to our village. I vote to go. And I, said Brandon. I vote yes, said Strong John. I, too, added Alone lightly. Yes, we agree, growled the mighty Val, the miller, who had stood silently in the shadows listening, shoulder to shoulder, as always, with Ellis, her twin brother. Val and Ellis toiled in the mill, grinding the grain into flour and endlessly cleaning the great stone building so that not a speck of dirt or the tiniest spiderweb could be seen within its walls. Giller, Rowan's mother, had said that since childhood no one had ever seen them apart. Yes, yes, yes. One by one the villagers stood up, and Rowan looked around at the familiar faces, now so serious and stern. Maisie, the keeper of the books, was standing, and with her son and her daughter, and so were Timon, the teacher, and Bree and Hannah from the gardens. White-haired Lan leaned on her stick beside them, and even fat, soft Solia, who made the sweetest toffees and cakes, and never could resist his own cooking, had struggled to his feet. Then Rowan saw Giller rise slowly and join them. His heart thudding with fear, he scrambled to his feet beside her. Giller is Rowan's mother. So it is decided, cried Brandon triumphantly. We will arm ourselves and set out at dawn. Wait, said Marley. We must not go without consulting Sheba. The mad old hag? The spinner of children's nightmares, the curer of pains in the belly. What has she got to do with this? Sheba is old, Brandon, but she is not mad, said Marley firmly, as anyone who has been cured of illness by her remedies will tell you. Sheba knows more about herbs than she does spells. She understands the mountain as you and I never will. And Sheba knows the way up the mountain, the secret way that she was taught by the wise women before her. We must ask Sheba to help us. This is a good idea, agreed Strong John, and the people murmured. Many did not trust the wise woman Sheba. She lived alone beyond the orchard, gathering herbs and growing things and selling the medicines and the ointments and the dyes that she made from them. She rarely spoke to any other than those that she traded with, and when she did, it was seldom pleasant. And the children of Rin were a hardy crew like all of their race, but they were afraid of Sheba, and they called her not a wise woman, but they called her a witch. "Oh, come, what harm can it do?" called Alan, grinning. "If the old one can tell us anything, which I doubt, then all the better. If she cannot, we have lost nothing." "Traveler's foolishness," snapped Brandon. "This is not a game, Alan the baker. Why don't you—" "Enough!" cried Old Lan, and she glanced at Brandon, who scowled. "We're going into the unknown," she said sternly, "and time is precious. We cannot afford to miss a chance to speed our way." "Who knows Sheba best?" "I know her," said Strong John. "She gathers an herb that grows under the hoopberry trees in the orchard." "I trade with her," said Marley, "her purple and blue dyes in return for cloth." "Then you two can go and beg her favor," said Brandon, "since you are so keen to do so," and she turned her back on them. "We will wait here for your return," said Alan. "Be speedy, there's much to plan." He laughed. "And take care not to insult her now. Like Brandon, she is not a woman to be trifled with." Strong John looked at the watching villagers and he pointed. Rowan jumped, and John's finger was pointing at him. "Boy Rowan," called Strong John. "Little Rabbit, herder of Bookshaw, run and get 2 cheeses from the cool house." The cool house is a place before they had refrigerators and stuff. They'd have either like a basement or something built into the side of the hill that was always kept as cool as possible, and they would store things in there, like food-wise. "Get 2 cheeses from the cool house, the oldest and the ripest and the strongest cheeses off the top shelf, and bring them to us at Sheba's hut. Sheba is very fond of good strong cheese, and the gift will sweeten her temper." Rowan stared, open-mouthed, and did not move. He was terrified of Sheba. His mother nudged him. "I will go," piped up little Anad beside him. "I'm not frightened," and laughter rippled through the crowd. "Go along, Rowan," Jilla urged in a whisper. "Do as you are bid at once." And Rowan scuttled his way through the crowd. "He is scared of his own shadow, that boy," he heard Val the miller mutter to her brother as he passed. "He will never be the man that his father was." Ellis grunted in agreement. Rowan ran on, his cheeks burning with shame. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is called Sheba. I will read that one and post it tomorrow. I wanted this video up sooner than that. Thank you all. Do a good job. It was nice seeing you this morning.